All right. Well, welcome everybody who's listening in. Some of you are experienced owners. Some of you we don't know yet, or sort of just meeting. But John and I inherited this program originally from the Delaware Valley Club. This was originally developed by Viviana Van Deerlen, as well as some of the other Tesla Cherry Hill people, and they kind of handed the reins of this over to us, and we've developed it further, modified it to account for changes in the vehicles, to account for developments with the Model Y, and we're excited to present the first winter boot camp of the year.
Yep. Actually, I'm gonna just add to that. If everybody, if you haven't, just I see Jay Menard's back and his mic's working this time. Hi.
You're right. Thank you.
Good, and you can hear us, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Now that you've done that, I'm going to tell everybody to go on mute.
Okay. Well, at least I've found the settings now.
That's perfect. I'm glad you came back.
And one thing we found works is if you ask questions in the chat, that's a really good way of getting that to us.
Right. So basically, I'm monitoring the chat over here. If you have a question on something, just pop it in there, and when we hit a good spot, we'll stop and we'll handle it. So okay.
Okay.
All righty. So yeah. So if everybody would mute, that's good. That way we won't get any background noise while either Ken or I are jabbering along here.
All right. So as we all know, it is November. We're not feeling much of a chill in the air right now, but we know that winter is coming. And winter driving with an electric vehicle is a little different than driving a conventional internal combustion vehicle. So we are really going to go over just winter topics from social media and Tesla service. We're going to have sort of a Q&A on winter topics too. We're happy to answer whatever questions people have.
Right. And the most important thing for winter driving is actually that little chart on the right. Best way to handle it is to follow those steps. Drive south and put the brakes on when you see sunscreen.
All right. Probably the single most common question I've seen pop up on every forum everywhere, which is, I'm having these dots show up. What does that mean? I'm having these yellow lines show up on the energy meter. What does that mean? That is showing you that your battery regeneration is limited. This happens if the batteries are cold, if the battery is almost full, which say about 95 or more percent full, or if the car is extremely hot. In these situations, as you'll notice, letting go of the go pedal will not slow the car as much as usual, and you'll find that you probably have to step on the brakes. Generally, this will improve as the battery's driven and as the vehicle's driven and the battery warms up. On the Model 3 and Y, it'll also show you a little warning saying that regen braking is reduced. On the Model X and Model S, you will see that on your instrument cluster on the energy meter. You'll see the yellow lines there, little yellow dashes, and right when you're getting started, you'll see a little orange or a little yellow triangle, warning triangle.
Right. Yeah, that triangle, by the way, tells you two things. It comes on when you have when you have limited regen, and it will also come on again whenever there's a change in your status.
Yep. One thing to note on the Model X also, Bill, is the dashes that show up, the yellow dashes, do not necessarily always 100% correlate with the degree of regen that you have. You may have noticed this already. When you're first getting started, just be sure to know that you may need to actually step on your brakes. It's not necessarily going to slow down as quickly as you used to. And that's kind of for everyone. Ways to improve your regenerative braking, basically ways of warming up the battery. Setting up to schedule a departure time by finish charging around the time you want to leave. You can adjust your start time, not so relevant in this state because we don't really have time of use rates for electricity. But you can also set to depart at a certain time. You can set it to precondition only on weekdays or all week. And while your car is plugged in, it'll always use the power from your wall for doing this. It's not going to tax the battery for doing this, but it will warm up the battery.
Yeah, an important thing that you might want to note here, though, guys, also is that this is all fine when your car is parked in your garage and plugged in. Yeah, I'll handle that 1 second, Bill. That's why I love the chat, man. This is great. Yeah, this works when your car is in your garage and it's plugged in and all is good. It's a little different if you're traveling. So if you're traveling somewhere and you're arriving at your destination with a low charge and it's cold temperatures, and let's say you go into a hotel, you're going to stay overnight somewhere. When you arrive is the time to go charge your car before you go in for the night.
Yep.
You don't want to wait for the morning, because what's going to happen is when your car's sitting out overnight and it's cold temperatures, your battery is going to get cold soaked. And if you go to charge in the morning with a cold battery, it might sit there for an hour before you even get the charge started.
Mm-hmm. That's even at a supercharger.
Yeah, especially at a supercharger. So when you arrive at your destination, when you're traveling, when you arrive at that hotel, that's the time. Charge your car up for whatever you think you're going to need the next day, so that when you get in the morning, you're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. I can vouch for bringing a car with a cold battery to a supercharger once. It took over an hour before the car even started taking on any electricity to the battery. Spent an hour literally trying to just warm up the battery to the point where it would get over 1 kilowatt of charging.
Right. So yeah, and look, all this sounds somewhat ominous, but it's really not. I
Yep.
mean, these are just things, if you know how it works and we know how to work around it, they're easily accommodated.
Yep. As we said, charging rate is reduced when the battery is cold.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. I have a question from Bill in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is there any benefit to precondition the car? Absolutely. What you're going to find, Bill, is even if you're depending on how warm your garage is, if you've got a garage that's good, if you're heated and you got the garage at 70 degrees, it's not going to make any difference. But if you have a typical garage where it's probably well insulated, and your temperatures might get down to 50 or something when it's real cold outside. I'm in the same boat. I see you nodding. You will find that, yes, you will have limited regen even at temperatures like 50 degrees.
Yep.
So it's not a bad thing to, at home, if you know what time you leave it in the morning, set it so that it charges, and set the time. And then when you go to the car, the battery's all warmed up.
Mm-hmm. Of note here, when you're on a road trip and you're going to a supercharger, if you are navigating to a supercharger, your car will start preconditioning the battery to get to an optimal temperature for charging. The Model 3 and Y show you a message when you do this. The S and the X do not show you a message when it's doing this. And you can see there how it does it.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind, though, that's somewhat of a double-edged sword, too. If you're really low on charge and you go to navigate to a supercharger, it's going to eat up a little more watt hours per mile to do that, as it preconditions the battery.
In addition to that, your cabin is going to be a little more uncomfortable. Tesla vehicles prioritize the battery temperature over everything else, including your comfort.
Except in the 3 or a Y that have the heat pump.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, what your battery state of charge is also a huge factor in determining what your rate is going to be at the supercharger. Your highest charging rate is going to be when your battery state of charge is low. As you can see here, this is sort of old news if you're looking at that on the bottom with a max rate of 145 kilowatts, but the point still stands. The charging rate is going to slow down as the state of charge increases. The way to do this best is to try to keep between that sort of band where you're going to get the max supercharging rate on your trips, between about 20 and 80%. It may save you time to stop more frequently and charge for less time than to stop less frequently and charge for longer periods. Jatoya, you're finding even with preconditioning your garage and setting your departure time, it takes a car a minute to wake up. Yes, that is normal. Sometimes, for whatever reason, a Tesla takes a minute or two to wake up.
Yeah, actually, for some reason this morning, I left my garage. My screen was dark until I got about a quarter mile from the house before it finally turned on. So even though you think the car is waking up, it's still drivable in most cases, but you just have to wait for your screen to come up, Jatoya.
Yep. This is not so relevant in Pennsylvania because it typically just doesn't get quite this cold, but there's a snowflake on your battery. That means your battery is extremely cold. That means also, if you see that blue bar there, that there may be some battery energy that's not even available until the car warms up more. You may also find dots on the right side of your energy bar. On the S and the X, you'd see that sort of at the top end of the energy of that energy circle. That means that not only do you have limited regeneration, but you also have limited power output. I can tell you from personal experience, having gone up to Vermont a couple of years ago, and leaving on literally the coldest day of the year, was minus 25 degrees out. My car was limited to 50 kilowatts of power output. Or I have never seen it that low. I will never see it that low again. It was incredible. But basically, John, what do you mean for how long?
For how long did you have that condition?
That lasted for probably about a half hour on the top end until the battery warmed up. As far as limited, battery availability, that probably lasted for at least an hour, but it was beyond frigid. That was some of the coldest temperatures I've ever experienced. Still managed to get up and down the hills, no problem though. I'm hearing loud thunk noises while supercharging. Is that normal? This is a thing with generally older Model 3s. This can happen when supercharging in the cold. This has to do with the metal in the battery pack flexing. This is fixable. There's a new sort of pressure release valve that they can install on these if you find the sound to be completely, particularly off-putting, but it's not dangerous. John, you want to take this?
Sure. Okay, so you've got a destination set in. You're driving down the road. You're only going 140 miles. You got 270 miles of range, and suddenly you get an alert that you need to keep your speed down. What's going on here is when you're looking at your range, what you're actually looking at is the EPA rated range, which is based on you driving at exactly at exactly the watt hour per mile consumption that the car is rated for. So the actual range is going to vary based on a number of factors like we have here. The first thing, and the one that's most important, is your speed, which is why you get that warning about keep it down below 70. And we're going to talk about the effects of speed on range in a couple of slides from here. So reducing your speed has a dramatic effect on your range. Temperature has a dramatic effect on your range. And finally, the outside elements. Is it raining? Are you going up elevations? All those things are going to have a dramatic effect on your range.
Yeah, wet roads are going to take away about 5 to 10% of your range just at a baseline. Elevation gain is way more important than you'd think, especially if you're heading up toward the State College area.
Right. So let's talk about the effects. If we look at this chart, now this is based on a Model S 100, but for generic purposes, I mean, you can really kind of extrapolate this and apply this to any of Tesla's cars. The ratings might be slightly different. So what happens, range is a function of speed at 4 different temperature ranges. So if we take a look at this, the lowest line on this graph is a Model S below 32 degrees, and you can see its range curve. Now, 35 to 40 miles an hour is always the sweet spot for our cars. If we're driving between 35 and 40, that's absolutely going to maximize range. In this particular case, under 32 degrees, that Model S is only looking at a little over 300 miles. Whereas when we're looking at the warmer temperatures, and in this case, over 68 degrees, it could be 470 miles. So basically, what we need to understand is that you have about a 30% reduction in range based on temperature. And that's what we need to factor that. And then when you add in the effects of speed, you can see, if you look along that chart, exactly how that decreases everything going down. So reducing speed, I was stunned when I first saw these numbers. Reducing speed from 75 to 65 gives you a range increase of 35 miles. Yeah, I got that, Bill. And again, reducing from 75 to 55, you're talking about a range increase of 70 miles. So out of all the things that you can do in the car, the number one factor you can use to control your range and deal with that is speed. And that's why the navigation system sends you that alert. So a couple of things we can do to maximize range for a trip. Okay, so if we kind of look from left to right here, the first thing is use seat heaters and use less of the climate control function for heating. Now that's particularly applicable in the 3, the S and the X early 3s. It's not as appropriate in the Model Y, since the Model Y is using a heat pump. And the heat pump actually has far less effect on range than the resistance heating that we find in the other vehicles. As I understand it, the new Model 3s that are coming out now are going to be retrofitted with heat pumps. They're going to have the heat pump in them. So again, heat in those cars won't be as effective. But if you're driving an older 3, an S or an X, using resistance heating has a dramatic effect on your range. So if you can cut that down and use the seat heaters instead of the climate heaters, you'll save some range there.
Yeah, the resistive heater in the Model S and X has a constant, I believe, 6 or 8 kilowatt draw on the battery. That is to say, in 1 hour, that will take 6 to 8 kilowatt hours off your battery.
So also in the S and the X, you have range mode available. By using that, by default, what you're actually going to be doing is the car will cut down on your interior climate control to help you increase your range.
Obviously, it also cuts down on the battery heating a little bit too.
Yeah. Choose a shorter route. Again, if you're in an S or an X, drive in chill mode. Cruise control is always an advantage. In your head, you can figure the computer is probably going to be a little smarter than we are with our foot. And will probably be the most efficient way for the car to travel. Again, precondition your battery before leaving while you're plugged in, and tire pressure is huge. Low tire pressure in these cars has a real impact on range. And as you know, Teslas use a lot more air PSI than the typical car. If you're an S or X, you're looking at 45. If you're in a 3 or a Y, you're looking at 41, 42. So to understand our actual energy usage, Tesla actually gives us a tool in the vehicle. The consumption chart. There are 2 charts here that we're going to go over right now, and these are my favorite charts. These give you the best tools for being able to manage the range in your vehicles. So you really should familiarize yourself with these. As we spoke before, if you look at the EPA rated range, which in this case, in this car is 246 miles is showing on range. And then we take a look at the chart. Notice that the projected range on this vehicle is only 217, even though it's indicating 246 up there. So if we look at the dotted line and the solid line that goes across there, that first solid line is the watt hours per mile that we need to be able to achieve in order to match that 246 mile range that's being displayed. The dotted line is telling us what our average energy usage for the last 30 miles in watt hours per mile has been. So if you look at this vehicle is averaging 279. The dotted line is above the solid line, and therefore we're using more watt hours per mile, which reduces our range, which is why the projected range is so much lower than the range that the car is showing up on top. Now, when those things are equal, in other words, in this particular case, we're looking at a performance Model 3 at 245 watt hours per mile, it will equal the EPA rated range. And that's when, if you look at the two, the dotted line and the solid line going across or on top of each other, our projected range now is 220, and the actual EPA estimated range, which is showing on our odometer, is now also 220. So when all those stars align, then we're at exactly the range that we expect to be at. When we're on a trip or traveling somewhere, this is by far our Bible. Thanks, Ken. This is a great chart to use. It's one of my faves. First of all, it's only there when you have a point set in your navigation. You have to have a destination set. When you have a destination set, and if you'll notice up on top, you see consumption and trip. The other chart we were looking at is consumption. Now we're just flipping over to trip. Okay, so on this part of the screen, the gray line that's down on the bottom is what your navigation system predicts you're going to use on this trip to make it to your destination. The line above that is what you're actually using on this trip to your destination. And if you look at this in particular, it's indicating we're doing pretty good because we're going to get there with more energy than the nav system had thought we would. So the thing to worry about is when that green line goes below the gray line. That's when you want to sweat it, because that means, you know, hey, look, you got a heavy foot and you're doing some stuff to basically use more energy than is expected, and that's going to be warning you that you may not make it there if you don't do something about it. And as you make adjustments while you're driving, that line will move up and down, back and forth across that gray line to let you know how you're doing. So energy use, average watt hours per mile increases in the cold. I mean, we pretty much, have talked about that. If you notice in this, the actual range you're going to get is going to drop. And this is where you're going to be able to see that. The stats that made up this chart were actually taken across from stats for the Stats for Tesla app. And what they did was basically they consolidated all the information that they had from all the vehicles that contribute data to them. And this was their conclusion. In the winter, 84% efficiency. As we get up to the spring and summer, we peak in the summer at 96% efficiency. And then we drop down again in the fall.
And this is taken into account all the cars, no matter where they're located.
Right. This is anywhere in the world. So just to summarize, recommendations for range. And this is new owners especially have a tendency to want to see the range displayed in miles. My recommendation.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. Bill, you're right to shake your head.
Just show energy, show it in percentage. You're going to be a happier person.
Right. We know that speed affects range just the same as it does in a gas car. If you drive the heck out of a gas car and have a heavy foot on the pedal, your gas mileage is going to go down. Driving an electric vehicle is exactly the same. So use the energy chart and the average watt hours per mile to gauge your actual range and energy use, and you won't be shocked when you get that message that says, hey, you're showing 270 miles and you're only going 140, but it doesn't look like you're going to make it. So go to that chart, and that chart will be the one that will inform you of what's really going on. Also in your trip meters, I as a habit, what I do is, Tesla gives us a couple of trip meters. I label one lifetime because you can rename your trip meters, and I never reset that. And what that tells me is what my lifetime watt hours per mile have been. So
sorry.
It's all right. I have to breathe every once in a while, Okay, so if we take a look at this at this particular odometer, you see this vehicle has been driven probably a little hard. 292 watt hours per mile is its lifetime average. That really lets you know how the car is being driven, how you're doing in using the least amount of energy that you need to. And it's I love when if I'm buying a used Tesla, that's the first thing I look at. Because if someone's been driving the hell out of the car and the watt hours per mile is up, I know that might be something to stay away from. So anyway, but the bottom line is enjoy your car. Don't worry about the numbers unless you need the range on a trip. Our cars have more than enough range for probably everybody's daily driving habits. And of course, those 3 tips: to get more range, slow down, turn down your climate, less relevant on the Model Y, and limit quick acceleration and use chill mode. Okay. You want to hit this thing?
Sure. I'm losing range while parked. Is that normal? Yes. That is called vampire drain. That is energy used just by keeping the computer on, maintaining battery temperature, and just keeping the car systems operating. How much is normal? About 3 to 5 miles a day. This used to be worse than it is now. This used to be a lot bigger problem than it is now. This is increased variably by things such as if the car is awake versus asleep. This is affected by apps that connect to the car, such as Teslafy or the Stats for Tesla app. If you have things like Sentry mode on, if you're parked in a place with poor cell coverage, if you're using cabin overheat protection in the summer, if you have summon standby on, if it's cold on, if you have any aftermarket add-ons on your car that use energy.
Yeah, take a look. The one that always stands out to me when I look at this is the Sentry mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sentry mode actually will use about 1 mile per hour. It's just the way Sentry mode is. It's keeping a lot of the systems in the car running, especially since it has 4 cameras plus, basically plus the computer on.
How long it would take a Model 3 to go to sleep, Vic, is really dependent on what you've got going on in the car.
Yep.
If you've got Sentry mode on, if you've got apps that awaken the car up, if you the poor cell zone actually got me by surprise. But I actually found out one time when I parked it at an airport in Baltimore, where I was in an underground garage, and suddenly, I was zipping through miles because the car was constantly trying to connect to the cell network.
Yep.
So sleep mode really depends on what you've got on or off in the vehicle.
Yeah.
You can go to sleep relatively quickly if there are no demands being made on it.
Yeah. Now, once upon a time, a few years ago, it actually would take about 24 to 36 hours for the car to go to sleep. Nowadays, especially like in your garage, if you have Sentry mode off, your car is going to go to sleep within about 30 minutes. Summon standby mode is another thing that keeps things on. This basically saves you about 15 to 30 seconds if you're going to actually start to use, or if you're gonna run summon. I personally don't keep this on at all, just because I can wait an extra 20 or 30 seconds. But this keeps a lot of things on as long as the battery is above 20%. Basically, except between midnight and 6 a.m., which is where it will automatically turn off. Can you disconnect the car from the network?
Yeah, I was just looking.
Yes, but only in as much as if you go into your if you go into the data settings and you disable sharing information with Tesla, I believe that does sort of kind of disconnect the car from the network, but not 100%. It also means, though, that you can't access your car using the app.
Yeah, the other problem with that would also, even though you're disconnecting its communications with Tesla, you still have other, your entertainment, your media stuff is also still going to be trying to get back connected to it. I don't believe that you can really totally disconnect the car from the network, though. You should have Wi-Fi turned off if you're parking it for a long period of time in a place where there's no Wi-Fi. Because you don't want the car to constantly be polling to look for a Wi-Fi connection.
Yep.
That you can definitely turn off.
Yeah. Which leads us into going on a trip. Number one, is it okay to leave your car plugged in? And number two, is it okay to leave it unplugged for an extended time? Number one, when in doubt, remember your ABCs. They used to put this in the manual for the car. Always be charging. Leave the car plugged in whenever it's possible to. In the Model 3 and Y, you can set it to 80 to 90%. For the Model S and X, set it to 80%. And it will maintain the battery near that. Once the battery starts draining down a bit, it'll charge it back up automatically to around that spot. You cannot overcharge the car by leaving it plugged in. However, if you know the car won't be used for an extended period of time, I'm talking more than a few weeks, set the charge level to 50%, leave it plugged in, and keep it there. And then what if I'm going on a trip and leaving the car parked at the airport? Yes, but you need to do a few things because you need to.
And hang on one second. Were there any questions on that last slide? You guys all get that okay? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you can leave a car unplugged at the airport. Sometimes you have no choice, but you need to do some things to plan to minimize vampire drain while you're there. You can choose to monitor your car intermittently with the app or not. Every time you turn the app on, every time you open the app, you wake the car up. You're going to want to make sure to do things like turning off Sentry mode, or at least being careful with that. Turn off cabin overheat protection, especially in hot weather. Turn off summon standby. Really, fundamentally, though, all you need is a 120-volt outlet hooked up to the car, and you're basically golden for when you're traveling. The moral of the story is just do everything you can to minimize the vampire drain. PlugShare is a very good app for finding places to charge or figuring out what the charging situation is at the places that you may be parking. So how do we minimize phantom drain? Don't use Sentry mode. Turn summon standby off. Turn off cabin overheat protection. Try not to use the app. Turn off scheduled charging and departure. And if you're using a third-party app, make sure it allows the car to sleep. There are some apps that pull the car fairly frequently. Teslafy has settings that you can adjust for how often it will pull the car. Every time it pulls the car, it wakes the car up. I can vouch for a trip that I went on in cold weather where my car was unplugged at the airport for 14 days in cold weather. I turned off all these things. My car, over those 14 days, lost 1% of its battery. I never checked the app once the entire trip. All right. Wet weather conditions, which we definitely see in the winter around here. Why is my car saying that autopilot is unavailable? Autopilot requires cameras, and cameras require visibility. Any sort of inclement weather will decrease the visibility, and this may not just turn off navigate on autopilot. I'm sure we've mostly seen, if we've driven in the rain, that navigate on autopilot becomes unavailable frequently. This can also turn off all autopilot features in particularly bad weather. Okay. But it's a really sunny day. Why am I getting these warnings? This is usually if the camera visibility is reduced due to either fog within the housing or sun glare. Anything that affects the visibility can impair the autopilot functions. If there's no obvious cause for what's going on, oftentimes it'll just go away on its own. Putting the car into park and starting up again can sometimes kind of reset it. Check or clean your cameras, or if the problem persists, schedule service. Now, one of the things that comes up frequently, especially this time of year, with all the temperature changes going on, is fog inside of your B-pillar camera housing. It is normal for fog to occur there. It is not normal for it to last more than a couple of hours. If it's lasting more than a couple of hours, that's not normal. There's an issue, and service can take care of that. But if it's there for a little while, that's not something the service is going to fix because that's considered to be normal. Putting the camera in direct sunlight will also make the fog go away quicker. John, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's the crux of it.
Yep. Any questions, anyone? All right. Snow on the front bumper sensors. You want to try to keep the sensors clean. Ice, mud, dirt, snow, road grime can affect your sensors, especially the ultrasonics. Even a little bit of salt and salt spray on it, actually, that dries on it, can really mess with those sensors. Bill says, can we spray Pam on the front sensors? He used to do it on snow throwers. Well, you can spray this on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would go with the Pam on that one, Bill.
Tesla specifically recommends using the Rust-Oleum Never Wet top coat, not the base coat. Do not use the base coat.
Yeah, the base coat never comes off.
Yep. But this is sort of basically sort of oily stuff that you can spray on there, and that'll keep stuff off of it. This is especially useful if you're going on a road trip up to a snowy location. Only on the sensors, not on the camera areas.
Hang on one second, Ken. Not necessarily, John. You can still get PPF is protecting the body of the car and the sensor itself, but that doesn't mean that it's impervious to getting, frosted up and getting all kinds of salt and crud on it that would cover it up.
Other tips and tricks for winter driving. I saw that they just started getting rid of setting regenerative braking to low.
Oh, good, because I hated that. I mean,
the newest vehicles don't have this.
Yeah, this was by the book from Tesla, which always said, if you read the owner's manual, set regen braking to low to help maintain stability on snowy and icy roads. Well, I've been driving these cars for 6 years in Pennsylvania, and I've dealt with plenty of snow here. You can get the Rust-Oleum probably in any hardware store, Bill. Probably Home Depot has it.
Or Amazon.
Or Amazon. Yeah, that's true. If you don't want to, I forget what's going on out there sometimes. But this used to drive me nuts because I always found that using my full regen when I'm driving in really slippery conditions has always been great for me because I don't have to hit the brakes. As everybody knows, you hit the brakes on a slippery road. Yeah, your ABS is kicking in, but it's doing all kinds of crazy stuff trying to stop. I always found that the regen, and you got to be, at this point of driving these cars all this time, you get pretty good with being able to control regen to stop the vehicle. If you're able to do that, I find that it is much better for traction in slippery conditions.
Yep. Really fundamentally, once you've driven these cars enough, you start getting pretty good at modulating how you're working with the go pedal to kind of speed you up and slow you down. Obviously, drive slowly. Don't use autopilot if you don't need it. Keep a snow scraper somewhere you can actually get to it.
Autopilot sucks in the snow. Don't even bother. It can't see the lines on the road. It's really just don't even bother.
Turning off your side mirror auto fold. If it's below freezing and the car gets wet and then freezes, sometimes that can mess with the motors a little bit there. I'm a little personally plus minus on that. I always have my side mirrors able to auto fold. Slip start is really important. Slip start turns off the ABS system. That'll make it so all the wheels will spin the same. That is your most useful feature for getting out of a situation where your car is stuck. I still have yet to run into a single situation where that did not work to get my car free.
And I'll take it one better. I've never had to use that to get my car free because the traction.
When it's minus 25 out and your car's in a foot and a half of snow.
Maybe maybe there.
Check your tire tread. Definitely important. Rotate your tires. Bill, with a Model X with the staggered tires, you can't really rotate them all that effectively. Unfortunately. And then making sure you're using appropriate tires for cold weather. Speaking of tires, my car comes, if you have a performance Tesla, your car came with summer tires. Summer tires are engineered to give you your best traction in warm to hot temperatures. At under about 45 degrees, these tires undergo what's called the glass transition, where the elastic compound essentially turns into plastic. Summer tires are extraordinarily dangerous on cold roads. Do not do that. If your car came with summer tires, you need to get winter tires for the winter. John, thoughts?
Yeah, actually, if you just hit the space bar, this sums it up. No, don't use summer performance tires in the winter. All season tire or a snow tire. Depending on where you are in Pennsylvania, you have two choices here. There are all season tires, but all season tires, the tread compound does stiffen in lower temperatures, which will not give you the best performance. Living in this state, I have learned that I spend the money and I buy a set of studless winter tires and I rotate them, going through the seasons. I love Michelin X Ice, but there's a number of tires out there that do a great job. It's worth doing it. They're designed to be driven in temperatures below 45. They remain flexible, and it gives you so much better traction.
Any questions about tires? All right, it's going to snow. How do I prevent my wipers from freezing? Most Tesla vehicles have a heater element for thawing the wipers. For the Model 3 and the Y, just turn on the front defrost setting, and it will start trying to thaw the wipers. For the Models S and X, use your wiper heaters. It's there if you have one that was purchased after 2017. You can use your service mode to raise your wipers. Never try to lift them fully away from the windshield. They don't work that way. If you do that, you're going to break your wiper arms.
Yeah, it's not like other cars, where you can pull the wipers straight up in the air. Teslas don't do that.
Yeah. Also, if you hit service mode, or it's great, or if you hit service mode and the wiper doesn't move, or if the service mode thing is grayed out and you can't even touch it, that means that you need to turn the wiper setting to off. The voice controls are getting better and better as time goes on. You can set your windshield wipers with it. You can turn on the defroster. You can turn on the heated seats. You can tell it that your butt is cold. You can tell it that your wife's butt is cold, and it'll turn on the passenger side seat heater. There's lots of commands now. All right, are the cameras or sensors heated? How do I turn on the heat for the side mirrors? The center cameras are heated. If your car is parked in the snow, it will look something like that because they're actually heating elements in the glass right there. Every single other sensor and camera is not heated. However, they do warm up when they're being used, which makes it look like they are heated. Like I said before, fogging of the camera housings is very normal. Using the rear window defrost setting turns on your side mirror heat. I came back to my car and found the charge port unlocked. Is it broken? The Model 3 and the Y, the charge port is almost always locked when it's charging. However, if the temperature is below 41 degrees and it's not charging, not actively charging, the port is going to remain unlocked to prevent it from freezing. This was an issue more on older vehicles. This is not as much of a problem now. There is a heater, or I guess there's now a heating element inside the heater or inside the charging port that used to not be on the older Model 3s and is now on every 3 and Y. However, if it's really frozen, if you start preconditioning the inside of the car, after about 30 to 45 minutes, it'll thaw enough of that ice within the charging housing to allow you to remove the charger.
Right, but that's really needed more in a vehicle that does not have the charge port heater.
Yep.
In the newer models, as Ken just mentioned, the charge port heater gets enabled by preconditioning the car or putting on your rear defrost, and that'll heat up the charge port. And that should be all you need. You shouldn't have to precondition the vehicle to get that out.
Based on the design of the charge port on the Model S and X, this has actually never been a problem.
Right.
It's just the shape of it on the 3 and the Y allows water to get into the housing. On the S and X, because it opens sideways and is just sort of straight vertical there instead of having that curve to it, this just isn't a problem. My door handles are frozen. My windows are stuck. What do I do? Precondition your car. That'll heat it up in the interior enough to actually get those things thawed out. WD-40 is also a magical thing. John can probably speak to that even more than I can.
Yeah, I swear by that. I've had 2 Model S's. I have a Model Y now. The Model S's, especially the older ones, I had a 13 and a 15. The Model S door handles were notorious for freezing and not coming out because there's a lot of water intrusion in there. So when that handle comes out, water gets in, and when it gets in there and freezes, that's how your handle gets blocked up. WD-40, I don't know if everybody knows this, but the WD stands for water displacement. So by using WD-40, I used to always spray it into my door handles, periodically, and I would never have that problem with water being, you know, on that pivot point that would basically lock up that door handle. So it's a great thing to use for that stuff. Doesn't hurt anything. Can drip down in the inside of the door, and it'll probably save you a lot of grief.
In addition to that, these cars are not as delicate as you'd think. If you've ever watched mobile service removing panels from inside the car or whatever, you'll see that they'll just literally yank these things off. These cars these cars can handle getting thumped on a bit. If your door handles are frozen, it is okay to bang on them to try to loosen up the ice. You're not going to hurt anything generally.
Yep.
Uh,
All yours.
Yep. Well, if the window doesn't auto lower, you can press down on it. Honestly, you can thump on the glass, and that'll loosen up some of the ice too most of the time. Tesla does have a winter window treatment available, at least in previous winters. I haven't seen anything about it this year. I'm presuming it does still exist.
I don't know. You know what? I have not. I don't see that in the store anymore, so I don't know for sure.
Okay, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. You'd have to talk to the service center about that. All right, winter is over. Hooray. Should you get your brake calipers and pads clean and lubricated? Highly recommended that you do this in this region unless it's a mild winter. This past winter, absolutely unnecessary. It literally snowed here like once. Dirt and rust do have a tendency to accumulate on your brake pads over the winter. Because these cars use regenerative braking so extensively, it is possible for water to get into your the brake calipers and rust them out. They're cast iron, they rust. You want to make sure these things stay clean and able to work.
Yeah, Nello, you shouldn't really have to do that. The seals around the window, around the doors and windows.
That being said, there's a fantastic product out there called Gummy Fledge Stift, and I'll type the name in here. And you can find this on Amazon. It was a product originally developed, I believe, by BMW. If you get the BMW branded version of it, they charge like $120 for a bottle. However, if you get the generic one just from the company that manufactures it, it's like $18 a bottle. This is a really good rubber conditioner. Bill, this is important for you with the Model X. The rubber seals on top of the Falcon Wing doors, they used really cheap, basically substandard rubber on those seals. It has no UV protectant in the rubber compound whatsoever. I actually apply this stuff basically monthly to my door seals up there to keep the seals from eventually cracking. Yes, you can find it on Amazon. You can use it on any of the rubber anywhere on the door seals or the exterior of the car. But it has a UV protecting component to it, and especially on the rubber seals on top of the Falcon Wing doors, that'll keep them in optimal condition. That was a really terrible design choice on their part, and they've never fixed it. And that basically covers the winter stuff. If you haven't joined us officially, come join us. We have a new updated URL for our website. We have a new updated email address. We had previously been the Tesla Susquehanna Valley Owners Club. We're now the State Owners Club. We have these chapters listed here. And anybody who wants to get more involved, we're always looking for more people to get involved. If you're interested in helping out with either leading in a chapter, or helping us with event planning or whatever skills you're willing to volunteer some time for. The phone number there is John's number. He does pick up his phone.
All righty. You want to unshare your screen there, or you want?
I can do that. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything here.
Nah, you didn't.
Nope. Questions.
All righty. Bingo. We're back. If you have a question, just actually, you can either, since I can see everybody, you can just raise your hand or put in the chat you have a question, and then you come off mute just so we don't step on each other. I see Nello doing something. Oh, okay. All righty. Well, that's great. I guess we did a really good job if nobody has any questions.
Are there any pressing topics beyond winter issues that people would like to discuss or get some answers to?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Bill?
Yeah, come right off mute.
Yep,
Bill.
come off mute and let us know.
I've been having a lot of phantom braking.
It's very real.
John.
Yeah.
It freaks my wife out.
The phantom braking issues apparently are getting worked out as they start rolling out the new full self-driving software. Yes, phantom braking is a problem, especially with dark underpasses. I'm guessing that's where you're seeing it most.
Actually, I've been getting it not only with dark underpasses, but just shadows on the road. If the sun's at just the right angle and there's a shadow across the road, I've gotten in the habit of now, even though I use full self-driving all the time, I will tell you 90% of the time when I'm driving, I have it on. But I keep my foot on the go pedal now, so that if I get any of this braking, someone's not going to ram my ass. So I can pump that pedal down pretty quick now. I'm pretty good at it.
One thing that's kind of coming up with the new full self-driving software is they're sort of referring to it as 4D, in that it's supposedly, I personally haven't seen it yet, but supposedly takes not just simply what it's seeing at that existing moment into account, but it's going to also take into account what it's been seeing up to that moment. As it is right now, you may have seen a news article a few weeks ago on how you can kind of spoof the driving software right now by, you know, what they did was they flashed for a moment a stop sign, for example, in the in the sight of the car's camera, and the car freaks out and slams on the brakes because it saw a stop sign, even though it wasn't there a moment before and it's not there a moment later. With the new software they're in the process of developing and rolling out, it's also going to take into account what the car has seen previously. If something wasn't a stop sign before, if there wasn't a stop sign in sight before, the thing that it's seeing probably isn't a stop sign. Same way as, the dark underpass that was clear and open road before, it's very unlikely that it's suddenly a dark wall. I think as they roll this out, we're going to see fewer issues with phantom braking.
Yeah, I mean, it is slowly getting better. I've actually noticed though lately, now it's starting to hit the brake when it sees a do not enter sign. Because it seems to think that, that's a stop sign, I guess. I guess the colors are right. But I mean, all told, it's improving. Pennsylvania is one of the few states that has this wonderful stop sign except right turn. I assume most of you guys have seen that. I don't know how soon it'll be before they handle that. So we're always going to have to be somewhat aware of that one.
Yeah, or white rectangular signs that say that the speed limit is going to be reducing coming up soon, but it sees it as a reduce the speed limit now sign.
Right. So the bottom line is, look, I've never viewed them as full self-driving systems. I've always viewed them as driver assistance packages. And you shouldn't treat it any different than you treat cruise control in any vehicle you've ever owned. You'd never set cruise control and not pay attention. It's the same thing with this. You set full self-driving. Yeah, I mean, look, you don't have to be quite as vigilant, but I'm certainly always aware and always ready to take over the car. And you really need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Flashing yellow lights overhead. Freaking out.
Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah, it's amazing when you start thinking about all that stuff and realize how complicated it really is to drive and how amazing our brains are to be able to process all this stuff. And now try to duplicate that with a machine. I mean, they've got some work to do.
Though what we've seen with the new full self-driving package, at least the videos that have come up, it's pretty impressive looking.
Yes, Danelle, that's absolutely right. First world troubles, isn't it?
Yeah, seriously, first world problems.
Things that we complain about, right? Just talking
My
about-
car doesn't drive itself well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I find it to be a little too aggressive.
So, sometimes, especially navigate on autopilot. You're talking about NOA?
I don't really care for that at all.
Yeah,
That's why I have mine set so I have to confirm lane changes. I don't like it just automatically changing lanes.
yeah. Well, I do too. But when you get to an exit ramp, it does that all by itself. And
Yes, it does. And sometimes because it's following the line, if it's one where it kind of shoots over really quickly, the car whips you over really quickly.
Yep. Yeah, that was an eye opener the first couple of times that happened.
Or, turn it off before you get to the exit.
Yeah, either way. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it does tend to be a little aggressive sometimes. I haven't even ventured to try the Mad Max setting on the lane change thing.
Nope. Not worth it. It's too aggressive. I can tell you as somebody who is an owner in with sort of earlier versions of Autopilot 2 back in late 2017, that was truly scary back then. This is so much safer and easier and smarter now than it used to be. When I first got my first Tesla, when you were cresting a hill with autopilot on, the car would automatically start veering you into the oncoming traffic every single time you crested the hill.
Yep.
If you were next to a truck on the highway, it would actually try to change lanes into the truck quite frequently.
Yep. And actually being an old Autopilot 1 guy, I loved AP1. And
AP1 was fantastic.
AP1 was so good because, quite frankly, it wasn't a Tesla product. I'm hopefully Elon's not listening, but the reality was AP1 was made by a company called Mobileye, and it was a great product, and they still have great products, but Tesla had a falling out with them. I guess they didn't like the numbers they were getting charged, and said, the heck with you guys, we'll make our own. And that's what got us where we are today.
Yep. And Elon being Elon, vastly underestimated how difficult that was.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
any other questions, concerns, thoughts, suggestions for anything in the future or anything that we didn't cover?
was this helpful? I mean, that's always the first thing.
That's the big question is, was this helpful?
Very much so. Yeah,
Good.
that was good.
Thank you.
Good.
All right.
Sometimes I just wonder if we're hitting stuff and hey, these guys have been driving the cars. They know all this stuff already.
Oh yeah.
But no, that's great. And anybody that signed up for a new owner class, as I said, you'll be getting an email as soon as we get one scheduled.
Yep.
We just need to get the numbers up a little bit to make it worth doing. So you don't want to just do it for 3 people or something. So we try to get at least 10 to do that. All right. Well, if that's it, then thank you all for joining us.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving, John.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you too, John. And great seeing you all. Hey, Danelle, if you got a minute, can you hang?
I can.
Okay, cool. Because I gotta go. Danelle, by the way, is a coordinator for our state college chapter. So as long as I got her on it, she's so hard to get a hold of. I don't want to let her go. Okay, so have a great night, guys.
All right.
All right, thanks.